Alright guys, so this is going to be the Unfavorable matchup. This is a version of Teaching's Control. Now, Teaching's Control is a deck that was popular for a little while. These days, you don't really see it. We do see some blue-black control decks that are out there. However, teachings is something, a list with a solid 4 teachings in the list main deck. It's something that really isn't played as much these days. It is, however, one of my favorite decks, so I do have a homebrew of my own that you see me running here. Now, I did play a set of matches here with Deluxe once again, and this was just like the favorable hexproof match where it didn't record all of the games, so you're only going to see 1 out of the 3 games. I will tell you that I did manage to win this set. What happened here is this was I don't remember if this is game 2 or 3. This is after sideboarding. I did bring in things like Duress, and I had an extra copy of Edict in the sideboard and stuff like that. A couple of negates I brought in as well to help counter the enchantments. So that's something that I just wanted to point out. Those were things that I thought would be giving me a great advantage. Negates help me target down those enchantments before they come onto the field. The Duress, again, gives me a chance to get them out of my opponent's hand before they come down. So opening hand was pretty good. We are missing our black source here, but we're going to keep it because of the fact we can get a turn 1 brainstorm in and hopefully find a black source. If not, we can still lead ourselves towards a turn 2 counterspell. A lot of the times what you see from Hexproof is they are able to get down the turn 1 creature, and then turn 2 is going to be devoted a little bit more towards putting down an enchantment or something to make it bigger. So again, starting off here, we do see a swamp. We also see Terramorphic, so we have some options here. Keeping in mind when you run Brainstorm, if you want to shuffle your deck, you want to put a card on top first that is a card that you don't want to see again, followed by the fetch land, which will be our Terramorphic here, and then on the following turn 2, you would activate the fetch land, and that would shuffle away the card that you did not want. So that is something to keep in mind when you are playing Brainstorm. Island here is the card that I do not want. The Terramorphic gives me a chance to shuffle it away, but I also kept the black land here. The Swamp gives me that chance to play that early Duress, gets me a chance to play the Edict as well. He starts off with Utopia Sprawl, which again is one of the great starts because you can lead into that turn 2 creature plus armor. So Terramorphic comes in. I decided, however, to play the Swamp. I thought about it for a minute there, and decided I wanted to have access to Duress here on turn 2, and that was more important to me than shuffling away that extra island. It would give me a chance to see what my opponent had in hand. As you see here, he is going to miss out on that turn 2 creature plus armor. He does have the armors available to him. He does have a chance to draw into that creature, but his best play here at this point in time is going to be a Gnarlid on turn 2. Again, and that's subject to change based upon what he draws. So Forest comes down. He now is going to tap out and put down a Ledgewalker with armor. So he did manage to top deck into the hexproof creature he needed, but I do have this one single Edict available to me. I know I'm going to draw into an island here because of that earlier Brainstorm, but I am still going to take this opportunity to Edict. Probably a bad play on my part. I think if we were to refine this and really clean up my play, the best move would be to wait until my opponent's turn when he had attacked, and then used Edict. That way it gives me an opportunity on my opponent's upcoming turn. If he wanted to cast another enchantment to make this Ledgewalker even bigger in response to him casting that, especially if it's like a Rancor, in response to him casting that, I can then Edict, which would kill off the creature and the enchantment, and that would be 3 cards for 1, as opposed to this, which is just 2. So that was probably a poor play on my part, but this is, of course, how we learn. Guildgate comes down, still 3 mana available, and we, as expected, see the Gnarlid. So going to play the island here. We're going to kill off this Gnarlid before it can cause me too much trouble, and make sure to tap out both of our black sources so that we have the 2 islands available for a counterspell on any kind of creature that is going to come our way. Abundant Growth comes out, and this is something that I occasionally counterspell. Sometimes I find it best to counter whatever he draws as opposed to what he plays. Depending where you are in the board state, it can be more beneficial for you to counter that and not allow him to even draw the card. So we allow him to draw the card off that. He gets another Abundant Growth, and we let him draw once again. Still 2 mana available. Another land comes down, which tells me that he's probably sitting... He still has 1 armor in hand. He's probably not sitting on any creatures. Disfigure comes in. That is a card that, again, not great, but I wanted to have that in there because I knew he was going to be able to sideboard in the Flag Bearers, and I wanted a chance to at least target those down. You see here I am running Doomblades alongside Edicts. It is important to keep the targeted spells to get rid of some of those important creatures like the Gnarlids. I know for a fact he was running 4. Either way, you know that it's going to be running at a minimum of 2 in most hexproof lists. So it's very important to have still a few targeted spells to be able to target down things like that, or the Flag Bearer, which is a very common sideboard option. I am going to sit here in Duress. He has Rancor and Ancestral Mask. Rancor is going to be the first target I want to get rid of because of the fact that I don't have a lot of chance to get rid of it. That's one of those things that because it has that replayability, once it hits the field, it's easy for him to get it back. So you want to target that before it hits the field so that it doesn't get that option to recur. So I'm going to get rid of that first. I do have a second Duress here, so I know I can just get rid of the Mask. If he only had one thing there, if I only had 1 Duress, then the first thing I would want to go for still is the Rancor, because to me it's the fact that he can get it back is more troublesome. So Mulldrifter here, I could have decided to evoke that and draw some cards off it, but I felt that it was a better idea to keep this mana open for a counterspell. Once these hexproof creatures come in, they're very hard to deal with, and I maybe should have countered that there. By itself, a 1/1 creature is nothing to fret, but you have to remember the fact that Hexproof can bring in an enchantment at any point in time, and that little 1/1 creature that you're laughing at is all of a sudden, something huge that you now have to deal with in some way, something that you can't really do because of the fact that it's going to be, untargetable. So we're drawn to a negate, which is great. Mulldrifter here. We have Disfigure. Doesn't really help us at this point in time because the Gnarlid is 5. Innocent Blood is going to be great. I'm going to cast it again. Misplay here on my part. I should have attacked first, got him to 18 at the very least. Obviously, his sacrifice here is going to be the Boggle because this Gnarlid is so big, but that does give me opportunities later on to look for a Doomblade or something that I can target that down. Topia Sprawl comes in. Again, I have an opportunity there to counter it because it is going to make the Gnarlid bigger, but what I really wanted to do is save that negate and the counter spell for an enchantment that is going to go beyond just that +1/+1. Any of the creature enchantments is really what I wanted to target down with that instead. So taking significant damage here off of this giant Gnarlid, but we're going to just have to sit back and hope that things balance out at any point in time. Still have this Disfigure here. Rancor's going to come down. I'm going to make that my first counter, still leaving mana available for Counterspell. You want to, of course, target enchantments with Negate before Counterspell because of the fact that Counterspell can actually hit those creatures. So when he attacks here, it's only going to be a 6/6, and I'm going to be able to use Disfigure if I want to reduce the damage here. Still taking 4, but it's going to just prolong me for a little bit longer, just until this point in time where I do draw into that Diabolic Edict. And that's a great top deck on my part to finish off the only creature my opponent had. Now I have this game pretty much the tempo controlled at this point. I have Innocent Blood here. It's going to give me another opportunity to kill off a creature. I have double Counterspell in hand. It's going to give him little opportunity to really make a comeback. Though he is building up a hand, he's got 4 cards at this point. It is definitely something that becomes a little bit more troublesome. So drawing into a Mnemonic Wall here, I am going to tap out to put down the wall in order to return a negate to my hand. This is one of the options I have available. I also have Innocent Blood. I have Diabolic Edict. But you got to kind of keep in mind that whatever you return, your opponent is going to be aware of what you returned. He's going to know it's there. So, I'm going to use the negate because it gives him the knowledge that I have it. It's one of these mind game things where I'm hoping that now he's aware that I have it and he's going to have to try and play around it. So he's going to have to throw away 1 enchantment in order to make a second stick. Hopefully that makes sense. So when he throws one away to negate, he thinks the second one is going to stick, but I'm going to still be able to get rid of it with Innocent Blood. Something that I want to keep in mind. Here is where I decided to get rid of the Abundant Growth, and he's he was not happy about that. Like I said, it's one of these things I decide based on the situation whether or not I want him to actually be able to draw the cards. To me, he already knows I have the negate. I think the tempo really needed to be slowed down on his part a little bit, even though I think I was kind of at an advantage at this point in the game. 4 cards in hand, and he's not making any plays. Either he's sitting on a lot of enchantments waiting on creatures, or he's holding back a little bit of land. Brainstorm, we're going to finally find a Teachings here. And again, switching away things, find the card I didn't want. I don't have enough mana available to me to cast double Counterspell. I have enough mana to do Counterspell plus Negate, so I decided it was the best move out of the cards I had available to get rid of the Counterspell, and I was going to shuffle it away based off of that Evolving Wilds that I top decked into. Or even the Mystical Teachings. Either way, those are 2 cards that I really didn't want to have to deal with. Spore Frog, I think, was an interesting sideboard choice for him. What it does give him is a creature that he can easily throw away to my Edicts, which is something that my like I said, this is a homebrew list of Teachings. I am running a full set of Innocent Bloods. I run 3 copies of Diabolic Edict. So it's something where he really does kind of need these creatures to, throw away to those and kind of get around those. What is going to end up happening here, he's going to attempt to do this. I am, of course, going to just counter it with the Negate. But Teachings is going to come out. I grab an Doomblade here. I can use that to kill it as well. And this gives me a chance later on to use that Negate to kill off something else instead. And that's going to throw away one of his Ancestral Masks. So this is where Teachings, we finally reached that mid to late game session. And it's really going to start to come together because of the fact that now I'm getting the Mulldrifters. I can start drawing cards and finally start doing some damage. Plenty of mana is still available here after the Mulldrifter to play the Counterspell and Negate. And he's definitely sitting back waiting for creatures at this point. The game's pretty much in my hand. I do have that Mystical Teaching still in the graveyard and plenty of mana to find what I need off of it. So definitely unfortunate for him to hit this kind of block, but it is going to give me that time. Teachings is not a fast deck at any speed. The only creature base that I'm really running here is the Mulldrifters, so they're going to have to be kind of my finisher. So we're going to take the chance here, flashing back the Teachings. What I get here is not really important. As you see, I have plenty of ammunition against him. So I grab a Teachings, and all this is going to do is help thin out my deck, hopefully to find another Mulldrifter. Draw into another Edict, and this game, like I said, is pretty well in hand. I have double Counterspell, I have Negate, I have 2 Edict effects, and my opponent's got a clear board, so it's going to be game over right now. I let him have the draw on this one because, again, there's nothing really he can do at this point. And he's tapping out here. He's going to attempt to use Armadillo Cloak, and this is a great play by him on the Mulldrifter. What that basically does is keep my Mulldrifter from attacking, and because, again, Teachings is a very small creature base, I need kind of every Mulldrifter I get, so that 2 damage is very important to me. So I'm going to actually use a Counterspell here in order to stop that from happening and prevent him from basically shutting down this Mulldrifter. Preordain here, finding Teachings, shuffle those both to the bottom and draw into a Mulldrifter. Plenty of mana once again to cast it, and I leave myself plenty of mana open and available to cast either the Edict or the Counterspells as necessary. Lagging up a bit here, attacking through. Evolving Wilds. Like I said, this game's pretty much in cruise control at this point in time. All we're doing is looking for Mulldrifters to do damage and holding on to Counterspells as necessary. There you see I throw an island at the bottom. I keep this Mulldrifter. You do kind of have to, at this point, like I said, this is definitely a late game deck, but it does have to worry about decking itself. You see I have 3 Mulldrifters in play. Those are quite a bit of cards drawn. My deck is down to 16, so there's a very decent chance of decking yourself if you're not too careful, but you just have to be aware of that. I think that's the important part. Just in the same way you have to keep aware of your basic land count when you have Evolving Wilds, you got to be aware of how big your deck is and what the clock is going on. There's a lot of things that you have to take into account other than board state, opponent's hand, opponent's graveyard, all of this stuff. So Ledgewalker's going to come down, but again, plenty of mana available to Counterspell and Edict, and that game is going to be over. This is, like I said, this was a pretty good example, I think, of what the Unfavorable matchup is like. I really wish the other 2 games had saved as replays, but this was a match. this is, definitely unfortunate because there is so much counter magic that it's hard to get around. There's also so much in the way of the edict effects. The Innocent Blood is really kind of a strong card in this matchup because of the fact that one of the ways that Hexproof gets around these types of decks is the fact that they can play a significant number of creatures. You saw him bring in the Spore Frog here, and that gives him that chance to have another creature on the board and another thing that he can easily throw away to Edict without having to worry about it too much. So what you can do in order to beat this when you're running the control option is you want to be able to keep this board clear so that Edict effects get what you want them to get, and be very smart about what you decide to counter along the way. I think, like I said, this is supposed to be the unfavorable matchup for Hexproof, so it was definitely something that they would struggle to beat. But I think it still gives you a pretty good idea of how it's supposed to work out and what are the different ways you can attack it.